Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Counselor, could you read the Open Public Meetings Act notice?
Certainly, Chairman, in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6 et sec, I hereby announce that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public through a notice that was transmitted to two newspapers, posted on the bulletin board here in Town Hall, and filed in the clerk's office by the Township's deputy clerk on December 6th, 2021.
Okay, thank you. Can we have roll call, please?
Certainly. Chairman Kin G.
Here, present.
Vice Chair William D. Castning, not present at this time. Commissioner Janet M. Burke.
Here.
Commissioner Gerald Buffalino.
Present.
Mr. Buffalino is present by phone. And Commissioner Zachary Gilstein.
Here.
Chairman, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. At the last meeting, we directed the township clerk to issue an RFP for professional services, in particular counsel to the Charter Study Commission. My understanding is that we actually did get 2 bids submitted. So I'd like to have a motion to enter into executive session as indicated in the resolution on the agenda.
Moved. Second.
Thank you. Take a vote. We'll do a voice vote on this, please. All in favor of entering into executive session? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, any not in favor? Hearing none, the ayes carry. We're going to enter into executive session. Hopefully, we don't think this will take too long. We'll be back. Thank you.
I think for the public's convenience, the commission will go outside, so you could stay in the room, and we'll step outside and come back in once executive session is concluded.
Thank you.
Right before that, she was not seeing the screen. So it says it's streaming.
Just you and me.
Yeah, I don't expect to find a lot of people at this meeting or any of these meetings,
I think you're
which is
probably.
really unfortunate given how many people got voted for this.
It is. Well, I'll tell you, in full disclosure, I'm here because I'm one of the 2 that put a bid in for, to be counsel. But I agree, and I actually find the whole process fascinating, that, citizens can change the government.
Yeah, but they're not, I mean, they're prescribed by law as to what they can change it to, so
Oh, I don't necessarily mean this group, I mean just the process of putting a question on the ballot and having people decide how to govern.
yeah.
It's not done at the federal level, the state level. Could be at the county, but not much, but towns can do it, which is, that's part I find pretty interesting.
Yep.
And a lot of people either don't know about it or don't care to know about it, I guess. Have you been involved in the town government?
In the town government, no.
No.
No, I had been on the board of ed for a number of years.
Oh, right. Okay,
No,
different.
I'm here just to listen to why these people feel that they need to spend all this money to change a government.
Good questions. That's, I'm surprised there aren't a lot more people asking questions, but like I said, there's,
Well, they came up with some reasons for changing the form of government that we have that make little or no sense, so.
what, during the campaign, was it, or just,
Let's see, we don't directly elect the mayor, okay? And some people, somebody made a comment, well, this is a form of government that's over 100 years old. That's the reason to change it? Maybe I'm missing something.
we should change our federal government then for that reason, right? That's over 200.
They just went outside, but there was a person on the phone. So how are they, that's interesting. Who the heck's on the phone?
In fact, I'm thinking as we're talking, I wonder if this still being live streamed? Because they said it's being live streamed.
Yeah, unfortunately, not knowing who is controlling the live stream, um, um, they may have turned it off for the moment,
Right?
but who knows?
Yeah, maybe you and me are getting broadcast over YouTube.
Is it casting on the phone or Buffalino on the phone?
No, he said casting was not present,
Right,
so
so it's Buffalo.
it must be Buffalo, yeah.
Hmm. So you are an attorney,
I am.
and you're looking to to be the commission's attorney, or the other one? There were two different ones on the,
Oh, I didn't know there was, no, I'm looking to be the commission's attorney. I didn't know what the other,
one is,
oh, special counsel. I don't,
yeah. No idea.
I'm not
Professional-
sure.
Special counsel. Let's see. The special counsel and appointee, so I can't tell whether it's one or two because, oh yeah, it is two. Because they have two slots open on the
Yeah,
resolved
I don't,
portion.
I don't know why that is.
Don't know why anything in the world is sometimes. Whoops, I forgot. Been outside for a couple of minutes. The attorney that is currently serving, Michael Collins,
Yep.
he's the township attorney. What was I gonna say? I don't know whether he planned to remain
No, I spoke with him. He said he's just,
doing this to get
Just-
them started.
right.
Yeah. So you've been involved in these types of, charter studies?
I have not been directly involved in any. These are, it's a pretty rare occurrence. So there's not many attorneys who have been involved. No, I've been a municipal attorney, and representing municipalities as sort of labor council, kind of like working for municipal governments for about 20 years or so. So I think, I told them I'm pretty familiar with different types of governments, how they operate, and the format of a public meeting.
Okay, Jerry, we're gonna go back into public session, all right?
You want to do a roll call, let everybody know I'm here?
Yes. Okay, we're gonna call the public session back into order again, and we're gonna do a roll call, please.
Sure. Chairman Kinji,
Present.
Vice Chairman William D. Castning,
Here.
Commissioner Janet M. Burke,
Here.
Commissioner Gerald Buffalino,
Here.
here by phone, and Commissioner Zachary Gilstein.
Here.
Again, you have a quorum, Chairman.
Great, thank you. So next on the agenda is a resolution awarding professional services contract for special counsel and the appointing of a Charter Study Commission attorney. As we discussed in the executive session, we have decided to appoint, and we're going to amend. There is a resolution attached to the agenda that spells out exactly the appointment of the counsel. What I would like to do is have a motion to adopt the resolution to appoint special counsel and Charter Study Commission with the additional amendment that within there, where currently there's blank, is to insert, now therefore be resolved that Starkey, Kelly, Kennelly, Cunningham, and Turbach is hereby awarded professional service contract to provide special counsel services as Charter Study Commission attorney. And also be it further resolved that Kevin Starkey is inserted as hereby appointed as counsel to the Holmdel Charter Study Commission. Could I have a motion to adopt that?
I'll move. Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Commissioner Buffalino,
Yes.
Commissioner Gilstein,
Yes.
Vice Chair Castning,
Yes.
Chairman G.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Kevin. So you've now been officially appointed as attorney. Come on up.
I appreciate it, thank you.
As he's coming up, I just want to thank Township Attorney Mike Collins for his services. We had to press him into services as we go into this organization and planning phase, and until we could formally appoint counsel, and we really do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And thank you,
Welcome.
members of the commission, I appreciate the appointment. Thank you. Thank you.
So just a procedural, you have to press down to talk and when you see the red light, okay? So right now it's off, okay. So next on the agenda is the approval of the Charter Study Commission meeting schedule. The Open Public Meetings Act does allow statutory bodies to actually adopt a meeting schedule pursuant to annual notice. We have lots of meetings that are now scheduled for 2022, and that's all shown in the resolution that's attached to the agenda. The dates are shown. The meeting time is will commence at 7 p.m. I just want to add that the meetings will be in this room, which is the committee meeting room in Town Hall. Could I have a motion to adopt that resolution to for that meeting schedule, please?
Second.
Good. Kevin, can you do a roll call, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Burke,
Yes.
Commissioner Buffalino,
Yes.
Commissioner Gilstein,
I have no concern about the dates per se. Whether all the meetings should be in here, I think we should leave as an open issue.
Vice Chair Castning,
Yes.
and Chairman G.
Yes. Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you. I just want to add, I know that Commissioner Gilstein mentioned about the meeting place. I just want to kind of maybe explain that a little bit, perhaps. Because of the pandemic and the COVID, Governor Murphy actually has an executive order which is still in place or is still in effect that allows for virtual meetings and meeting by Zoom link. We're going to discuss a plan going forward as the next agenda item, but there is a possibility where perhaps a virtual meeting might be beneficial depending on what. So the intent is that we have meeting dates, we have time, we have a place. However, if the commission does decide that it may be beneficial to perhaps conduct one or two or more meetings on a virtual basis while the governor executive order is still in effect, we will elect to do so, but then we will certainly notice that. It will be on the website. Zoom link will be provided, but until such notice, then we should go by that. The meeting will be at this place at 7 o'clock. So, all right. So the next agenda item is a discussion of the plan for the Charter Study Commission. As I indicated in the organization meeting, the Charter Study Commission's charge is a simple one: to study the current form of local government and to consider new charter or improvements to the present charter. But it's also important to make the distinction that the mandate is to study and explore how we can improve our form of local government. Just to be clear, it is not a mandate of this commission to make an analysis or review of the operations or the policy of the current government. If for some reason you're not happy with the specific action or decision of either the current or past township committee, this is not the venue to voice your comments about that, unless you believe that the current form of local government is a direct cause or is a significant contributing factor. Now, on the other hand, you might believe that the current government is working well, but may want to change the form of government. As an example, might be that you believe that the mayor, as the official that represents Holmdel Township, should be directly elected by voters. Our current form of government does not allow for that. Let me talk more about that. Holmdel is governed by a form of local government called Township Committee. By law, the Township Committee can have 3 or 5 members, and Holmdel chose to operate under a 5-member committee. The population of Holmdel has grown in the last few decades. Most of you know that Holmdel's Board of Education has 9 members, the Zoning Board has 7 members, and the Planning Board has 9 members. One area that could be studied and explored is whether it makes sense for a different form of government that allows more members in our governing body, or not. A second characteristic of the Township Committee form of local government is that it consists of 5 members who are elected to serve a 3-year term on a staggered basis. What this means is that we have a local election every year. This is not the case for other forms of local government, where there might be 1 to 3 years between local elections. A third characteristic of the township form of government is that members are elected on an at-large basis. This means that they don't represent any specific district. An option available under alternatives is to elect members of the council by districts or wards. This may or may not be desired depending on whether you think a district's interests are being fairly represented. As mentioned earlier, a fourth characteristic is the fact that the mayor is not elected directly by voters. Instead, it is decided by members of the Township Committee at the beginning of the year to serve a 1-year term. A fifth characteristic of our current form of local government is that elections are held on a partisan basis. What this means is that we actually have 2 local elections every year: a primary election held in June and a general election held in November. Other forms of local government allow for elections on a nonpartisan basis, and towns in New Jersey and in Monmouth County have chosen to hold elections on a nonpartisan basis. A final characteristic of the Township Committee form of local government is that an initiative or referendum by petition from residents is generally not allowed. There is an exception for bond ordinances where residents can require a referendum of the bond ordinance by petition. So the Township Committee form of government is more than 100 years old. The state of New Jersey has updated and modernized the framework for local government, and there are options available to Holmdel that may be worth studying and exploring. Residents in towns near Holmdel have elected to modernize and change some of the newer form of government. For example, Long Branch, Marlborough, and Tinton Falls have a form of government called Mayor Council, where the mayor is directly elected along with members of council. Other towns like Aberdeen, Asbury Park, Howell, Keensburg, and Ocean Township chose a form of government called council manager, with or without the mayor being directly elected. So right now, we're in what I call an organizational and planning phase. At the last meeting, the commissioners were all sworn in office, and we elected a chair and a vice chair for the commission. By law, we had to do that within 15 days of election results. At this meeting, we now appoint a council to this commission and set a schedule for our regular meetings. What I would like to do now is propose a plan for the commission to proceed and move forward. In broad terms, this plan is divided into 3 phases. The first phase is to study our current form of local government. We will bring in witnesses that can provide input or insight to the Township Committee form of government. The commission will then conduct interviews of those witnesses and ask questions regarding the strengths and weaknesses of the Township Committee form of government. These witnesses will include past and present public officials of Holmdel and perhaps some other towns within Monmouth County that operate under a Township Committee form of government. The second phase is to explore alternative forms of local government. I propose that we hold at least one information meeting with outside expert that can present what other forms of local government that may be available. Like the first phase, I also propose that we interview officials from municipalities that currently operate under an alternative form of government to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of that particular form of government. Our agenda allows for public comments at the end of our meetings, but in addition to these public comment sessions, I propose that we hold a public hearing so that the public has the opportunity to come forth and provide input to this process in both phase 1 and phase 2. After phases 1 and 2 are completed, we enter the third and final phase, in which is to deliberate and make decisions for any recommendations. Our findings, along with the recommendations, if any, will be filed as a formal report with the Holmdel Township Clerk. Those recommendations will be in the form of a public question and will be subject to approval or disapproval by Holmdel residents in an election. By law, we have up to 9 calendar months to complete our work and file a report. It's okay, we're able to complete our work earlier, but we cannot go beyond the 9-month time frame. With that, I'd like to kind of open up for discussions and comments to the other commissioners. Any comments? Or should I start calling on people?
So are we just discussing what our plan is going to be now?
Yeah,
Okay.
just, and any comments to my proposal?
Well, I think your proposal is good as the outline of what we're going to do. I think what we should do is also make some very specific plans for our next 3 meetings, since we're going to be getting meetings and we want to get something done. So let's understand what we're going to try to get done on the next 3 meetings. I think we should also target a particular meeting for public comment and public input, and we might want to put that on the calendar now so that people will know that might be a good day to show up if they have something to say. But I know you mentioned that we're going to interview people here in our local township. So I think we should start to identify who do we want to invite, who should we talk to, and then which meetings. I mean, you know, offhand, I would think we'll probably talk to each person maybe up to a half an hour. I wouldn't think more. So maybe 4 people per night would be good. So you could cover 8 people in a couple of meetings. Who do we want to target? We could give people a choice of which meeting they'd like to come to.
Okay. Any other comments?
Well, in regard to what was just said, I don't think we need a lot of people for the first phase to come in because we're familiar with it. I think a good sampling, I'm thinking 4 or 5 people that have served on the committee in Holmdel, maybe from other towns, but I don't think we need to have a whole slew of people coming in because we're pretty familiar with it. And some people that work at Town Hall as well, to get a
Yeah.
sense.
Well, so then why don't we just talk about it? I think we should talk to Sharon, we should talk to Bill Antonides, I think, probably the two administrative people I would think we'd talk to. I think both of them have had experience in other towns as well, and would probably be able to provide good input to us. So I think those are two people we should talk to. So if you think like 5 or 6, so like who are the other 4 you're
Well,
thinking?
I'm thinking also people that served on the township committee,
Okay,
or
so,
currently serving.
And I'm thinking of, two, I'm on, right? Yeah.
Your light is
I'm
not
thinking of, two, perhaps outsiders, meaning outsiders, people who are not elected officials, former elected officials of our township, but perhaps one Democrat and one Republican from nearby Monmouth County, and one that pops into mind is a gentleman who's a mayor of a town abutting ours, and the other would be someone who I used to serve with years ago when I was on the township committee of Millstone Township. So I think it's important to get 2 former or current elected officials from other towns as well.
other townships? I mean, if it's for
no.
the first phase,
What,
Wh-
I
where we're-
understand. Yeah, I understand. One of them is a township person, and of course, Janet and I are former township people,
Mhm.
although I'm not from this township. She is.
So just to clarify that, your suggestion, your comment, Bill, is that it's from a township that currently operates under a township committee form of government. And so that would be, it seems to me that would be appropriate as part of
For
phase 1.
Correct.
right,
yeah.
yes.
Correct.
And the other person would probably be for phase 2.
Phase 2,
Yeah.
I agree.
Right,
So, yeah, no, let's, obviously, I think we do need to separate to make sure. So phase 1 is studying the current form of government, whether that's people within Holmdel or not Holmdel, because again, our mandate is to study the form of government, not necessarily the current government. So that would make a lot of sense. So I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to speak. Jerry, do you have any thoughts, comments, anything?
is Jerry there?
Did we lose him?
Is he on mute?
Jerry, are you there?
Jerry, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
I was on mute, I'm sorry.
okay.
I was saying that I like the discussion about the mix being from within the town and from outside the town. I think that's a good sampling, even in the first phase of this, to examine, quote, the township form of government. And I think that will help us understand better what we're going to do in the second phase. So while the first phase will be somewhat limited in terms of maybe numbers of people we interview, it's still important to do this because I think it'll set the stage for the second phase of where we step next in terms of interviewing other forms of government outside of Holmdel and seeing what pieces may fit together better. But yeah, I'm on board with this plan and anxious to get started with it.
Okay, great. So I'm just looking at the calendar that we just adopted tonight, and the first 3 meetings are in January 6th, January 13th, January 27th. Today's December 9th, so it gives us adequate time at least to reach out to potential people that could come forth to kind of schedule that. Anyone have any specific thoughts as to the public hearing comment?
So, well,
Janet,
before we go there, why don't we get the list of the people we're going to invite?
Well, I'd rather not get the list out yet until we know whether someone's really interested in speaking or not.
But,
because,
Well, let's talk about who are we going to ask,
yeah. Well,
so that
okay.
we'll know who
so
we're asking.
I think what we said was we definitely need a chorus section of public elected officials, both past and present, both in Holmdel and in other towns within. I think we're going to limit at least to Monmouth County that operates under, the township committee form of government. Is that Any disagreement with that?
No, I'm within that category. I think if we're gonna move forward, let's identify who we're going to invite so that on January 6th, we can have a productive meeting and not just be sitting here talking about who we're gonna invite again.
Yeah,
or
so
who
it's
we
kind of
just talked to.
catch-22, isn't it? So we
No,
need to.
no, it isn't a catch-22. If we make a list of here's 8 people we want to invite or 6 people we want to invite, we'll call them. And maybe they'll come and maybe they won't. And then we'll say, these 4 people are available, and we'll plan to have them at our meeting.
Well, if let's say hypothetically, if only 2 people agree, and
Then we'll have 2
I
people at our
would
meeting.
like to extend invitation to maybe 2 more that could come on that date. So I do think it's a little bit of iterative process. In other words, it won't be. I don't think it's as simple as saying, okay, here are the 4, because
Well,
quite honestly,
okay.
we don't know what people's schedule and what calendar.
Right.
It could be that.
So then I would suggest, why don't we make a list of 10 or 12 people, and maybe we can prioritize them, and then we can ask them, and we'll see who's available and willing to do this. But I don't know, I don't understand who we're going to invite if we don't talk about who we're inviting and how we'll know who's coming.
well,
I don't think it's a catch-22. I think it's for us to sit here, make a list of people, like you know somebody in particular you're thinking of, Bill. You must have a name, or she. So let's put the name down. I named 2 people I think we should talk to from our town. Maybe you have some people on the current committee or former people you think we should talk to. Let's identify them and say we're gonna go, and we'll take assignments to go talk to someone and see if they're interested, so that we can move this forward.
I think we can, am I on? No. Hey,
If you flip the switch on the bottom, it'll always.
I don't want it on all,
You are on right now with that light on talking.
oh, I thought I had to press it to be on.
No.
Because it's already on, okay.
Then you press to be off.
So I haven't been
Otherwise,
on
it's
before.
press to be on.
So I think we can think about people that have been on the township committee, who are, we might think are available. There are a lot of people that have been on that from a long time ago, they don't live here anymore, they're in Florida, whatever. And, I mean, I guess we could throw out a few names. Who do you,
Zach, do you want to identify these names this evening?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yes, I think, look, if we're gonna move this forward, let's make a list of people we would consider inviting. Let's just put their names, like, I think we should, Larry Fink's a former mayor. I think he'd be worth hearing from. You know, our current mayor, I think would be
He's trying to talk.
worth hearing from.
Yeah, can we do this now? I mean, we have the time. I agree with Zach that we should start coalescing this, because the holiday's gonna be on us pretty fast.
Oh, yeah, no, clearly, if we're gonna have anyone come on January 6th, depending on, that's just kind of,
We
what-
got to get this in motion, sooner rather than later, I think is what Zach is saying.
yeah, no, and I think we're we're all in agreement on that, right? So the reason I want to bring up the other public hearing, because depending when you want to have that, one example might be is that you might want to have that on January 6th, because that changes the calendar on when you want to invite people. That's the reason I wanted to at least kind of concurrently talk about that. But listen, we're all in agreement. I think we want to move forward on this thing. There is a hard deadline of the 9-month, and you know, so we know that we need to make sure we do as much as we can. We don't want to find ourselves, you know, come July, August or something, and saying we're running out of time here and cut the process short or anything like that. So absolutely, we're in agreement with that. So if you could, let's go through, I'd like to get some people to maybe throw out some names, but let's see if we could maybe concur with that, just think about any thoughts about when the public hearing for the public should be held, because that will, that could, affect things as well.
the
This will
hearing
be-
when
this
the
will be
public,
after the first phase, right? You're saying the public hearing after the first phase.
well,
No,
I think it's part of the
it's part of the
first
first phase. Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So it should be part of the first phase. The question is, when is the best time to do that? Because then I think we can, pick some names and then, invite people. But the dates, we have limited number of dates in January. We have 3 dates, right, obviously. So, we should pick one date, and then we know that, unless we could do is, let's get some names and we could make some calls, and then depending on the availability.
I think we have to do some interviews before we do a public hearing, right? What are we gonna
Yeah,
talk about in the public hearing?
I think the public hearing, we should
Right.
target the 27th or the 3rd of February.
Well, the public hearing is not for us to talk, it's for the public to talk and tell us what they think. But I'm open, but I just want to be clear about that point. So, so why don't we do this? Maybe if, if you guys are okay or comfortable with it, maybe I'll ask you guys in turns to kind of throw out some names that we could think about.
Mr. Chairman, if I could also make a suggestion, I mean,
Sure.
I sense maybe there's some reluctance to mention names publicly because there may be people that don't want to be pressured, don't want to be named, don't want to feel like they can decline then. Another way to do this might be to designate, you are a public body, so you can't meet more than 3 of you, or 3 or more of you cannot meet together, but 2 of you can meet at any time. And maybe
Right.
it makes sense to not, sort of propose 2 of you to be the inviters, and then the other members can give you names kind of offline of people they think, because they're, elected officials may not be as concerned about being named, but employees, municipal employees, maybe. But they can still be invited. Anyway, just a thought about a process.
That's good advice, Kevin. I like that. I think that's a good thing. I mean, it won't be this evening, but it will come within the next 2 days, maybe, right?
That would be the hope if we go with that, yeah.
So,
So,
in terms of a hearing, I was thinking that we should have, well, at least one hearing for the first phase, at least one hearing for the second phase. But in my mind, I'm thinking at least 3 hearings. So I'm thinking maybe we do one in January and then in the following month as well. I think it's really important to hear people sooner rather than later. But I would like to start the interviews beforehand. And in terms of who would be coming, I think we have a general idea that we started to say former people. You mentioned one who are on the township committee. You mentioned a former mayor. Somebody on the current committee, 1 or 2 people on the current committee, and a few people from the past. I think, if we have 5 or 6 people, I think we're pretty well suited.
Yeah, I think we also need to talk to some of the administrative people.
I agree with that, but in
So
terms
that
of,
would be additional couple.
so maybe 6, 7 people?
Well, and one township committee
And somebody
person
from, or 1 or
outside.
2 from other townships
Yeah.
other than Holmdel.
Okay, I think we could probably do 3 in a meeting, so maybe that's 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay, so that,
Yes.
thank you, Counselor, for the suggestion. I'd like to move that we follow that, if people are okay with that.
just repeat that again, just so I make sure I understand exactly what
Well,
we're gonna do.
I guess my suggestion was that the committee designate 2 of you to be kind of the inviters, on that the other members of the commission, make suggestions to them. Can you invite these people? Do that offline so as to not put people's
Right.
names out in public that may not be. And then you have those 1 or 2 people, being in charge of inviting, letting people know what they want, designating times and dates for their appearances.
So I think it's a good idea to designate a couple people to do all the inviting, if we want. I could have also said, we'll just divvy up who's gonna invite whom, because I don't think that's so hard. But I think we're here in a public meeting to discuss what we're gonna be doing. I think we can discuss this publicly of who we would like to hear from, rather than 2 people taking input and then the others don't know who's on the list, and then we have some other 2-person meeting. But we're here as a committee, as a commission with 5 people here to voice their opinion and say what they think. I think we should be doing it here.
Well, are you suggesting that we name people tonight?
Yes, that we make a list of
Okay.
people we would like to invite, and then we will designate who will be the inviters, and then we'll see who, then we can report out 2 by 2, I guess,
Okay,
who accepted it.
another way of doing it, perhaps in order not to put names out and have the concern of naming somebody who really doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to say it publicly, whatever, is to have the 2 people form a list. One of those people can talk to each of us individually, and because two people can talk. And so if there's a sense that somebody is missing, you can say, why didn't you think of this person? And that person can be reached out to. I'm
Okay.
assuming that,
All right, so I'll move forward with this plan, but then let's say we're gonna be giving input by some date certain, like Monday, and then we'll do the 2x2 backward readout by Tuesday, and then we'll have everybody will then have an understanding of who was on the list. Because I don't want this just to be some ephemeral thing, and then, we're coming here, it's the end of December, wondering, well, did anybody invite anybody, and
well,
what did we decide to do? So let's make, let's substantiate the plan of how we're gonna do this.
Okay, so, yeah, that's fine. Why don't I do this? I'll make a motion that, maybe Jerry Buffalino and I could serve as that committee of two. Let's go with the dates that, if all members of this commission could by Monday morning, by noontime Monday morning, please, hopefully the earlier the better, but no later than Monday morning, give me the names, we'll consolidate the list. And I think that hopefully there'll be a lot of overlap and not too many names, because that will be a constraint as well too. But and we'll put together a consolidated list. We'll share that within the confines and limitation of Open Public Meetings Act and everything, and then we can make sure that the invitations and we can start to reach out to people and see how they feel about coming before the commission. That sound like a plan?
Well, assuming Jerry agrees.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm all right with it. If you want me to do it, I will do it.
Well, I only picked Jerry because I know that he's got, the reason he's dialing in by telephone, he's not feeling well as a cold, so I expect him to be home most of the time working.
In that case, I think I'll resign.
For the record, that's a joke.
I agree with everyone. We need to get this thing moving, and we can't wait until after Christmas to do that. So let's get the names. Let's get the names on a list, as Kevin has suggested. We do this, and we'll get it done. And it's a couple days, Monday or Tuesday next week, probably should work, because I think most people already have in mind who it is that they want on the list, right?
Okay, so we agree. So if
And
you
then-
guys could do that, and then say by end of Tuesday, we'll share that list and we start to reach out to people. Now, I'd like to do is set at least the first public hearing meeting for the public, because I think it's important that if we really do want people to provide input, which we do, the earlier we can at least set the date and advertise them and so on, maybe before the holidays get too crazy. I think that hopefully we get more people to come. Do any idea, any suggestions as to, we got January 6th, January 13th, and January 27th are the 3 dates in January. So,
Or
You know,
it could
my-
be February, well, I won't be here February 3rd, so,
I like the 27th.
yes.
We'll have
Yeah.
2 meetings before then.
I agree.
okay. Jerry, any issue, any problem with that?
I think that's good. I thought we needed to get some of this interview process moving before we actually had a public meeting. I think that would be my vote as well, 27th.
Okay, so let's get that nailed down a little bit, and then what we could do is get, make sure that gets noticed and advertised for public to come and give input to that, because I think it'll be useful to get notice out on that.
Right.
Yeah, so.
One more comment. And I see it's on the agenda for tonight. I think it's a good idea. And just, I think to fit in with what you're saying, every meeting, you're, as a public body, you're required to have a period of public comment. So I just want to make clear that the meeting for public comment, which I think is a good idea,
is not exclusive of every meeting being an
Yes.
opportunity for public comment.
Yes, I have a question regarding that. When the zoning board meets and somebody's presenting testimony, the public is only allowed to ask questions about the testimony. They cannot state personal opinions until at the end of the process, then they can state that, like, I hate this idea of what they're gonna build there or whatever it is. So I'm wondering, do we have similar opportunity to say, like, if we're interviewing people, can people ask just clarifying questions about something, or is that their opportunity to stand up and give their diatribe on whatever it is they want to talk, or can we limit comments to just be pertinent questions or something?
Right. The important distinction between like a planning and zoning board meeting and a meeting like this is that planning and zoning board really is a quasi judicial meeting. People are presenting, witnesses are presenting evidence, and they are, members of the public are entitled to cross-examine them as if it were in a trial. This is not so much like a trial. It's not presentation of evidence. It's hearing from witnesses, not even hearing from people who have an interest or knowledge they would impart to you. So because of that, it is entirely within the commission's discretion as to how to allow public participation. In other words, if you wanted to, say to the public, would anyone like to get up and ask this person questions directly, you can do that. If you want to say, this person's here for presentation, not to be cross-examined, we're going to let you, the public, make comments on that presentation at the end, after we're done. You can do that. And I think you don't necessarily have to decide that now. You can discuss it as it comes up. You can make a decision now. I would suggest that because you're having people come in voluntarily, try to impart their wisdom, in effect, or their knowledge about government, that I think you probably don't want to have them subjected to a cross-examination procedure.
Okay.
So I think probably in most instances, you want to say to the public, you may agree, you may disagree, and that's fine. And when it comes to that time, you may get up and speak your piece. I think it's probably a better way to do it, and I think you might encourage volunteers to come in. Right, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, right.
So effectively, we have public hearing every meeting, and then we have certain meetings where we're dedicating to just hearing
Correct.
from the public. That's good.
I have a procedural issue, another procedural issue. Are minutes being taken of our meetings?
Yes, you will approve minutes. And the chairman asked me to prepare minutes of this meeting. I think maybe we discuss how we do that going forward.
Yep.
Okay.
Ideally, I think you'd have like a secretary of sorts, could go through the video or audio and prepare that.
Somebody from your,
Well,
organization?
typically you'd have a municipal employee do that. I mean, I think that's probably the most cost-effective way to do it. I mean, I could have someone from my firm do it, but I just think if you have someone already here, it's a less costly process if that's someone that the township would make available.
Yeah, that's an inquiry I need to make. I think we do have some capacity issue here within the town hall, but that's something we can look into.
And that person can email all 5 of us. correct?
Oh, it'll be the typical procedure, right? The minutes would typically go out in draft form. You'd review them at the next meeting, or whenever they're presented, you'd approve them publicly. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments?
About the plan? Yes.
About the plan, okay.
Yes, so we're going to target a series of people we're going to interview on January 6th and January 13th. I think we should talk about what we're going to ask them and come to a consensus on the set of questions that we want people to address. I also believe it'd be good to give people a set of questions in advance so that they know what we want to hear about from them. So I think it'd be good to talk about that now, so that we just don't come in at the next meeting and we don't know what we're going to be asking.
As long as it's the same set of questions provided to all those people.
Yes,
Yes.
Well,
Yeah, I mean-
ideally,
I mean,
that
I
would be the
think-
case, but
yes.
it may not always be just because
I mean,
they
the
may have different
conversation-
capacities.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
the
yeah,
but
the
look,
administrator.
administrator is different than a public
Right,
official.
yes.
It may be very different than, let's say,
Right.
someone who
Yes.
happened to be
Yeah.
from
Right.
academia, or maybe very different from.
Right.
I meant former or current elected.
Yeah. So, I think we do need to be, it's good to be consistent. I think we do need to have, I'll throw this out for what it's worth. Look, I think we should, to make sure, just kind of for the public record and for the public to know, is that people have an opportunity in a very short 2-3 minutes, whatever kind of their background experience and whatever, just so people can have a perspective that what they have to say and evaluate that. But two is then I think we can get into, as a general theme, again, we're trying to study the form of government, and there's going to be some specific questions, but, I've listed all the characteristics. Those are the things that defining what the township committee form of government, and I think to inquire as to their opinion as to strengths and weaknesses of different things, where there are limitations to, because the township committee form of government that does things, or there are things they wish to do, and then, so that's kind of as a general guideline, as a sense, but, then we can from there develop into specific questions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, okay, go ahead.
I agree. Somebody may come in and we ask them, you were on the township committee, what did you see work or not work? Whatever they say may bring out other questions that, so I don't think I think we have a general idea, but I don't think we should do a set of questions. One witness might not have much to say. Somebody could say a lot that's very important. And I think we want to individually be able to ask questions of that person without being set to a script of what we're going to ask.
I think it's a mix of both.
Yes, it's a mix
Right.
of both, because I think if you don't start with a script of what you're trying to find out, in the end, we'll just have a bunch of stuff. And I think I think the questions need to focus on, as Ken outlined, as Chairman G outlined earlier, that there are lots of characteristics of the township form of government. I think we need to get people's input and perspective on each of those characterizations or those particular things. Like I said, our township form of government, we currently don't elect the mayor directly. I think we should get input on whether people think would be a good idea or a bad idea. I think that we currently have 5 members of our council. I think we need to ask people, do you think 5 is the perfect number, or do you think we would do better to have a larger committee? And we might even get some perspective on, do they think 7 is good, or 9 would be even better, or maybe 3 would be plenty.
But then it's not a township committee, right?
Right, but I think that's
Well,
that's the point, is that we're trying to get this feedback
But
so
you're
that we'll be able to make an
The
assessment.
township committee is limited to 3 or 5,
Right,
and that's what we're doing in phase 1.
Right.
Is township committee.
right. And so we should find out whether people think that's a limitation in our current form of government, that we're limited to 5. And if they said, yeah, because when we were a township of 3,000 people, 5 made sense. We're in township of 17,600, 5 doesn't make so much sense anymore, which might lead us to say, maybe we do need to make a
You
change.
presupposed it doesn't make sense.
No, I said maybe it doesn't.
All right, I'm
I
playing
mean,
with you.
but, maybe somebody would say that, but I think each of these characteristics, which is what ultimately we're gonna be deciding about, whether they're a limitation in our current form of government and whether alternatives give us something better to do, we need to get people to give us some perspective. Otherwise, it's
Could
just
we,
us.
instead of giving specific questions, because I kind of agree with what Jan had said earlier about that, because things will develop as we're going through the interview process, and so we may not stick to the exact questions that we're handing them. Could we give them a script of some of the ideas that you're throwing out here about forms of government, i.e. electing the mayor, whether we should have representation from wards within the town, because not all sectors of the town have been represented on the council. Those are the kinds of things, rather than specific questions, I think, that will develop into a response from an interviewee that might bring out other things that we're not thinking of asking.
Well,
So
That's good. I mean, you know, if we just want to say, here are the topics we want to talk about, and instead of posing it as questions, we just want to talk about wards and districts for elections. And, you know, if people would understand what
give
that
them a
means, we could say
description.
that, you
Give
know,
them a description
electing or not
of-
electing the mayor. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to pose it as a
Right.
question if you think it's
Exactly.
it's more of a
And-
topic,
and
that's
the
fine.
strengths,
But
and what we're going to ask them about is how they feel about the strengths and weaknesses of their current form of government,
Mhm.
which is a township form of government, those kinds of things. Keep it as broad as possible, I think, and rather than going into specifics up front, because like I said, I think things will develop during the interview process, and we don't want to be confined to just a set of questions, perhaps.
Yeah, but I think the questions aren't meant to be confining. They're meant to make sure that we cover all of the pieces of information that we're going to need to do the assessment. So if it's like can outline 6 or 5 characteristics, all those 5 should be on our list so that we'll make sure we talk about them and get the perspective on those things.
Yeah, and I think that, but that could be done as a checklist to make sure we ask the question. It could be presented ahead of time. I don't see any issues or conflicts there. So,
So let's
But-
make the checklist.
But, yeah, now you gotta get a checklist created, and only 2 people can do that with input from the others, right? Just like we're getting names.
Or we could make the checklist right now.
I'm wondering, we're trying to decide whether the current government is good. This is what we have, the Township Committee government. Are there any weaknesses with it? I mean, if everybody came in and we said, how did everything function? Perfect, everything was great, I wouldn't change a thing. Then why are we asking them, you know, why, do you think it should be more people, less people? I think they should come in and tell us how this system operated when they were on the Township Committee or now on the Township Committee. And I would imagine that they're going to say, this really works great. I'm a little concerned about this, and take it from there. I don't know that we need to ask them everything about, we want to know how it functioned while they were on the Township Committee or are on the Township Committee, and if they think it works well. And that's kind of where we're starting from. Is this a good form of government, or are there weaknesses? And what are the strengths? Because when we go to the next phase, we want to, but I'd rather them tell us instead of asking them specific things until as it comes up.
Let me ask this, to your point, what's good or bad or ugly of the township form of government, does that include how you get elected? Or is that verboten?
Well,
my opinion is that again, we're not, to the extent that it affects, the operation of the township and what is beneficial to have it or not have it. I'm not sure I understand the question, I guess, maybe. When you're saying, can you clarify? I'm sorry.
Well, you in your opening statement, you mentioned that the process requires 2 elections for, and one being a primary and one being the general election. So my question is that part of this discussion?
Well, yeah, okay, so from that aspect, I can tell you what I was thinking of. The answer is, I don't know, because going back to what Janet said is, if we get public comment, public input that says, I'm making things up, so it may or may not bear anything to reality. So on one hand, you could say, everything's working fine, this is perfect, and it doesn't require any change. On the other hand, you may get someone and say, listen, we get election fatigue, there's just too many elections every year, and I'm tired of the divisiveness, whatever it is, and then that may become something that we need to think about and consider, where, alternate form of government, that's something could be addressed. So, example might be, there's a good, if they said, listen, this election doesn't work because we're not getting the right people on on the township committee. That's, we need to maybe get a little more deep into that, but get clarification, but that may be something that we need to explore in phase 2. I don't know if that makes sense to you?
I don't know what makes sense to me.
Okay.
But you know, the day-to-day operations of a township committee, what works, what doesn't, that makes sense. But how you get there, become an elected official, I'm asking of whether that's something that's considered as part of this process.
It is, because the alternatives admit of alternative ways of electing people. And it's one of the things that we're gonna have to make consideration of. I think it's something that we should seek input on, and whether people in the current form of government think that's a limitation, or a limitation, and to get public comment on whether that's a limitation in our town. Because ultimately, it's one of the considerations. I mean, you know, like as Chairman mentioned, alternate forms of government have different ways of electing people and don't have multiple elections. And I think that's something that's for us to give consideration of.
Yeah, we have to cover that.
So,
because
so I think we need to
the
seek
various
input on
structures.
it.
You seek
Yeah.
input during this first phase.
Yes.
Yep.
I
I
just
mean,
wanted to make.
you know,
is
during the
it-
first phase, I tell you, my expectations are, people are serving in the government, everything's great. I'm doing a great job, I like my job, everything's good, you know? I think we will get, I'm not expecting, my expectation is sort of low on deep,
Well,
you know,
yeah.
profound insights that we'll get. But I think we need to get the input and see, you know, and then we'll probe on certain things, and we'll learn some things, I'm sure. But then I think, you know, then we'll look at all these other forms of government, and then we start probing with other people.
Kevin, is there anything that's off limits in terms of input, seeking input?
Is there anything that's off limits? I just,
Well,
no, I'd be guided by your own discretion, but generally, no, I can't think of anything off limits. I mean, we were deciding on, well, they should have a new form of government. Ideally, you want as much information as you can get. You know, obviously, if someone is standing here giving testimony or giving information, and they say, I prefer not to answer that, to me, that would be off limits. Whatever that, you know, if they say, I don't want to go any further, because, you know, people don't have to talk about it, but other than that, can't really think of any sort of broad limits that you'd be subject to.
I can see employees not wanting to
Yes.
say, I don't like this or I don't like that. But I think they can say it in a way that is not particularly negative. I'm thinking back to when I was in the township committee a long time ago. And at the time, I really liked our administrator. And I talked to him about his limits and what he could do, and how some things get political and not as efficient because of his limitations. Now, I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I remember, you know, if you have a really good administrator, should that person have more power or not? So it could be things that are not particularly negative, but certainly people who have served on the township committee must have things, some are going to say it was perfect, but I would think that there are some things that maybe were not perfect. Even if it's a matter of saying, well, I wish there were more of us because we all have to do so much work. I wish we could spread it out more. I would think that regardless of who we call as, you know, to give their input, that it won't always be just totally rosy. Just
Okay,
So, rather than questions, we were talking about bullet points.
yeah, so let's make our list. So we said what works well, right? What could work better? Okay,
What shouldn't we be doing?
Well, don't laugh. That is a really good point, actually. It's, you know, things that we should do and things that we shouldn't do. But listen, I'm mindful. I think the setting up of I mean, it's easy with the characteristics, so we got a checklist that certain things are asked and so on, just to make sure we get the input on the current form of government. But I think if we want to develop specific questions, I would actually suggest that we get into more of a two-person committee and then feedback into the group rather than try to do this live here, because I don't think that we'll.
Can that be done in executive session, Kevin?
No. No, executive session is for very specifically defined purposes, personnel, litigation, things of that nature. You don't want to have general discussions about your processes in executive session.
So,
Okay.
why don't we just keep making our list of topics now? And maybe we could be done in 5 or 10 minutes. I don't understand why reluctance, like, what, like discussing together as a commission what topics we would want to talk about with each of the interviewees.
Yeah, no, there's no reluctance to discuss
So
general
let's-
topics or anything like that.
so,
I think
okay,
I just
so
want to
I-
be careful within all of a sudden try to develop into, whatever number of 30 questions that we need, and then sort of kind of, parsing the language of the question and
Yeah,
things like
well-
that. So, but I think if we're doing a general
Okay.
topics and then making a checklist and things like that, I think that's perfectly fine.
So here's
Just-
what I've noted so far. What works well, this is regarding our current form of township form of government. What works well, what could work better, what shouldn't we be doing? Okay, so those are 3 topics. I mean, I could rattle off a bunch more, but maybe some other people want to put some topics on the list.
Well, you got to ask the obvious question whether the mayor should be directly elected.
Okay. So as a topic, it's how the mayor is elected.
And also representation from other areas of the town to make sure everybody,
Okay.
feels connected.
So
So-
what I could make a suggestion is we actually, like I said, there are certain characteristics that kind of define the township committee
Yeah.
form of government. So what we could do is really to generalize form of that. But for example, the mayor is not decided by the voters. How do you feel about that? So we have currently 5 members that serves on the township committee. How do you feel about that? Working, not working? So kind of that the members are elected at large with no district representation. How do you feel about that, right? The elections are held because of the way the 3-year term and staggered basis. We essentially have election every year. How do you feel about that? And the elections are held on a partisan basis, which means you essentially have 2 local elections. You have a primary, you have a general election. How do you feel about that? There is, with the exception of a bond ordinance, which by petition, voters can require that to be a public question. Voters actually cannot have initiative or other referendum. How do you feel about that? What am I missing? I think that's off the top of my head, the kind of
Okay.
defining characteristics of a township committee form of government.
Okay. So you were speaking ahead of my writing.
Oh.
After all township committee members are elected at large.
This is captured by audio and video. We can come back to that, but so again, I just kind of went back to the characteristics
Okay.
of the township government. So
Right.
which point are you at now?
I
Ta-
had 2 after
township-
that. I had elections held every year.
So elections are 2 a year?
Well,
And- and
it's
are
kind
not-
of separate. I'm sorry.
Should we
They
separate?
really are 2 separate points, only because
Okay.
one is, it's, members are elected, the township committee members are elected on a 3-year term. Because the way the staggered basis work, almost every year there's either 1 or 2 member comes out, so every year we have election. Now, separate and apart from that, even though they seem to be related, is the fact that we have partisan election, which means that there's a primary by each of the major parties in June, and then there's a general election in which typically candidates from both parties or any independent candidate may emerge will have that. So there's effectively 2 local elections every year. So that's kind of separate. And that is a characteristics of the township form of government. So
Right.
as opposed to, there are forms of government where everybody's elected on a concurrent basis for 4 years. Or even if they're on a staggered basis, they may be elected on, 4 years, but 2 are coming off on a staggered basis, but there is odd years in which there are no election, just as an example to illustrate, to make sure
Right.
it's clear why. You captured the at-large district, right?
Yes. Then
and
the
then-
other point was initiative and referendum
Right.
petitions, which are not
How
permitted.
how about voting and whether the mayor should have veto power?
I'm not,
That's what he might be.
It could be
I think
phrased,
I think what Matt's saying is
differently.
a broader view is that under the township committee, the executive and legislative functions are consolidated within the one body of government, and under other Faulkner Act forms, they're separated, executive under the mayor and the legislative under the council.
yeah, so I guess another way to put that, if I may, I'm a lay person as opposed to a legal person, but Jerry, if the mayor is part of the body and has a vote in it, there should be no such thing as a veto power if you're part of the voting process. The reason there's a veto power is that in some of these alternate forms of government, the mayors actually may preside over the meeting of the council meeting, but actually does not vote except in the case of a tie. And then when ordinance or things are passed by the council, then it's submitted to the mayor for signing. There's typically time limitation, 10 days or whatever it is. But because the mayor is not part of the voting process, then, and because of the separation, as Kevin said, between sort of the executive and the policy setting power, that's why he's at veto. But I don't think that pertains to the township form of government, because the mayor is one of 5 equal members that votes on, resolution on and out.
But
You
that
could
matter-
rephrase the question a little bit, whether
Oh, we're not
maybe a
making
different,
questions.
aspect might be different, but I don't think that the mayor itself, because he's voting, he's part of the yes/no vote process.
Well, the mayor
Uh,
sets the agenda and runs the meetings, right?
Right.
And he can veto somebody else's suggestion for
she.
an agenda item, correct?
Kevin, maybe you can help me with this, but I believe that if a motion is made by
Yeah, if different towns do it differently, but under Robert's rules, which most towns operate under, the right way to do it is you have a chairman who sets the agenda, but the body, meaning a majority of the members, can add or take off an agenda item if they choose to do so. So it's not technically a veto power. It's more of an administrative running of the agenda, subject to the approval or disapproval of the other members.
And not only that, in practice, I think you've probably seen it where, for example, at a township committee meeting, and we probably all have seen this, a member may make a motion, and if that motion is second, even if that's not an agenda item, that will get
It's for the
discussion and
good of the
voting.
order type thing.
Exactly, yes.
So,
Yes.
and we've seen this where, a township committee member could do that. And so, again, that's not a veto power. If there's a motion made and there's a second, the chair would have to obligate that by taking a roll call with her, whatever that motion is.
Okay, so the other thing about a mayor is they get all the calls. And, maybe, is that fair or unfair to the individual? Is it fair or unfair to the others who don't get those calls? And so I think that's something that
Yeah.
needs to be addressed and considered.
I think the other thing, I don't know that was noted in our list of topics, was the size of the committee.
So again, the township committee by law
By
can have 3 or 5, and
Right.
the question is that,
Is that
you know,
adequate?
is that enough? Is that working well? Is that not working well? So.
I think
Just-
that's a pretty comprehensive list to
Just-
start with.
Yeah, just to clarify, was Jerry asking whether he thinks, asking the person whether the township committee works well because everybody has an equal vote? Or does the person we're talking to think that the mayor should have more power? Was that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting to, Jim. Thanks for clarifying that.
Because that is a characteristic of the township committee, that everybody basically is equal, other than
Right.
setting the agenda.
Yeah.
And
Right.
other,
Right.
So, the way to, again, word that is, if you want that as part of phase one, and I could understand why, is that, you can make sure people understand that the township committee form of government is, with the exception of the fact that the mayor is presiding over the meeting and setting the agenda, is that, it's 5 equal members and voting, and then you can ask, is that working well, not working well, I guess is the way I would try to phrase that. And the limitations, and depending on, what the answer is, then that may or may not become part of phase 2. That makes sense, Jerry?
Yeah, and only because we see difficulty, right, with majority versus minority on the township council, right? In terms of getting things done. So is there a way to improve that? Or make it better, or make it more accountable to the residents? That's really what we're trying to get at here. And, it may be difficult to verbalize that right now, but that's the kind of thing I'm thinking about, because we've run into issues with this consistently over the years.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is direct related, but it does come under a little bit of the 5-member, township committee. There's, so, the question of whether 5 makes sense, whether the 7 make it work better or not, or 9, or whatever, kind
More
of thing.
voices rather than less voices, yeah. I mean, there may be folks that we're going to interview have opinion about that, and it'd be nice to get that on the record if they do.
Yeah, which is why I think we ask more the general question. To the extent that they got an opinion, I think it will come out, right?
It should, hopefully. You're right.
Well, but I think
Yeah.
it goes back to a point Janet made earlier, which is, look, regardless of checklist questions, whether we have, I think that it doesn't limit us. Look, we're not a court or anything like that, but certainly follow-up questions, clarifying questions, and all that,
Yeah.
that will be allowed, and it allows us to delve deeper into whatever things that any commissioners here may want to follow up. So I don't think that there's anything that stops us from doing that.
Yeah, I don't think the list of topics is limiting in any sense, but it does give us some reference point to make sure that we got input on all the things that we know we're gonna need input on to be able to come to ultimate conclusions.
yeah, I think it's good to look at it as topics as opposed to specific questions.
So one topic, although it's infrequent, is a vacancy due to resignation or death.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of leeway, but Kevin, maybe there are, by law, I believe that there are, so what we could say is clarify. I don't think it comes up that often to be an issue, but if it does, I think, you could clarify that I believe that there are certain rules that, depending on whether it's partisan versus non-partisan. If it's partisan, I think it's whatever party that that
Right.
individual
But the
belongs.
question is, what do you think about?
Right, no, I understand that. So
Yeah.
first step is
Alright.
make sure people understand how the current process works,
And,
and then they can express an
and
opinion.
is that process different based on the form of government you choose?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just thinking about it. It's I
Okay,
don't think it
then we should
differs
investigate.
much other than it definitely differs between partisan and
Yeah, that's
nonpartisan.
right.
I don't think there's much of a difference between, let's say, township committee and a Faulkner Act mayor council. I think the process is mostly the same, although the one difference is, I know in a mayor council format, the mayor does get to vote if there's a tie. But other than that, I think it's fairly the same.
But
Same
if it's
process.
partisan, it's usually 3 names are thrown in the hat
Oh.
by the county committee.
Definitely so. There's a difference between partisan and nonpartisan,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yes, those differences are the same across the different forms
Are
of
they?
government, right?
Okay.
But it's, yes, partisan, non-partisan, have different ways of filling a vacancy, that's correct. Yeah, the political party puts up 3 names and then that's chosen, and nonpartisan, it's anyone can fill the seat, be chosen, as long
And
as they're.
of the 3 names, an R and D can vote for, an R can vote for the Ds, and the Ds can vote for the Rs?
The 3 names are submitted by the political party alone,
Yes,
and then the members of the governing body, whatever their political persuasion,
they all can vote.
correct.
Got it.
Remaining members anyway.
All right.
So it's an election.
It is.
No, well, it's an appointment, really. Well,
Well, I thought you said that 3 people's names get thrown in and then people vote on it.
the members of the governing body do, so I guess in a sense, it's an election by the.
Only the committee?
Yes.
Yes,
Correct.
it's
And-
only the
but-
township
but-
committee
but
or the
just-
whatever form.
Just to be clear, that is simply filling the seat temporarily. Then there is a special election at the very next election for the people to fill that seat.
For the remaining term, for the
Correct.
unexpired term.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
But they should wax eloquent about it.
Sure.
Actually, I'd say I'm not so interested. Because I don't think that that's going to be
many
distinguishing whether we're
people
going to
know
change.
about
it. Yeah.
I doubt that that'll be the reason we
Yeah,
decide.
and,
if
and,
we do
and
to
it doesn't
change our
happen
form of
often enough
government.
that I think that's an issue, whether it's,
I don't think it's a
okay.
defining characteristic.
no.
Besides death or resignation, it could be,
Yeah, even
in-
resignation is
indictment.
rare, that
Quitting.
does happen.
Oh,
but,
indictment,
um,
yes.
I think I recall
Mhm.
Holmdel having
Right.
it once in the last
Right.
20 years, maybe.
Okay.
Anyway, okay.
Okay, so
Let's
then-
move,
well,
you have more
yes.
comments? I want
Yes, I do.
So-
Because we talked about the kinds of topics we want to discuss with former officials. If we're talking with the township administrator or, say, the CFO, there are probably some other topics we want to talk about with them, or at least I'd say that the context is different because we're looking to to understand from them whether there are things about our form of government that are inhibiting them from doing the best possible job for the town. I think that's what we want to
So
get at in some way.
I understand completely why you might want to have,
So,
let's keep names out, but those 2 functions to be there. I really don't believe, I believe there's going to be hesitancy for people to speak, frankly, especially in their current job, about whether they're limiting things that on their job. I think they'll speak factually on facts, but not, I think if you start to reach in the area about opinions and things like that, I think that's an area that I think,
Zach, have you heard about the Hawthorne Effect?
yes,
Okay,
From
so
the
that's kind
Hawthorne
of what
Effect.
happens. For the rest of you,
yes.
you know, when people are observed or ask questions, they change their behavior.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But,
So-
I mean,
So I don't know
obviously.
what the value add might be, because you.
Well,
might not
I don't,
cover
you
it.
know, the one paper I wrote about how to execute this process, it said you should talk to members of the current administration to get their input, because it may
and-
be that the form of government is limiting.
and
for
and
them.
I've seen the same
And
write-up
I
that you
don't know how we'll
have.
get feedback on that unless we talk to people.
You'll get feedback, but you won't know whether it's entirely truthful or honest.
Right, right. So you'll take it
Well, the other thing
Whatever
we should be careful. I think. Look,
context it's given.
this commission should exercise its judgment and discretion as well. I think that I realize this doesn't happen too often, and so obviously we're going to try to get as much input, information, guidance as we can. But at the same time, I think sometimes you got to take some of the stuff being written and kind of exercise our own judgment. I think. I don't believe, looking at the form of government, that administratively I could be wrong. I've seen some reports of Charter Study Commission where they try to talk to a lot of department heads and whatever, and I at least so far, what I've gathered is that it hasn't been as helpful as it could be as opposed to talking to other people. But I'll leave it at that. I can tell you that for sure that if we talk to current employees of Holmdel Township, I think we gotta be careful we also don't put those people in a position where they think that they may be exposed because they're answering questions from this commission. I think that's a reality of things. I do, you know.
Yeah.
Well, you could ask them,
Well,
what
we'll ask
what
them whether
makes
they're.
a good administrator? What makes a good CFO? What could
Well-
make them better?
Well,
What are
I-
their limitations?
Yeah,
What-
yeah, but I'm not
without-
really, I'm not interested in what makes a good administrator, because that has nothing to do with the form of
But
government.
what in the
But-
context of the form of government?
But some
but-
forms of government, the mayor is the chief administrator.
Right.
And other forms of government, you hire a chief administrator, who then effectively reports to the council, but I think most of his or her interaction, I suspect, is through the mayor. And would it make a difference which form of government we looked at, based on what this relationship is, about whether the mayor is gonna be the chief administrator or not? Or whether the council, is somehow inhibiting on administering the town most effectively. Another form of government might vest more delegation into the administrator, which allows things to run more smoothly.
See,
I don't know.
Let me give you
But-
an
but-
analogy. I run a nonprofit. I have 30 bosses,
Mhm.
you know? And so you never
Right.
can do everything right.
Right.
ever.
Yeah,
But same on a smaller scale with a administrator. He or she's got in this township form of government has 5 bosses,
right.
and sometimes they're confused on what to do, and sometimes they do nothing. Therefore,
Yeah, I mean, one of the other forms of government, each council member effectively runs one of the departments. And that's the way the structure is. And I think a lot of the towns along the shore run that way. Thought that was sort of unique, but I don't know that would be best. But that was one of the alternative forms. That was,
and
that was the interest in talking to some of these folks, to see whether there are things that are distinguishing among forms of government that might make things better or worse. But, if you don't think it's worth talking to these folks, then,
Well, again, that's one person's opinion, right? I
Yeah.
just, I understand where that might come in, but I think it might be more useful in phase 2 as we talk to, other people that may not be directly related in terms of their job and livelihood or whatever.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
I just, I think we ought to be careful on that we don't put someone in a position where they could jeopardize their jobs and stuff like that, and they're reluctant to say things. I think that's the kind of position that they may find themselves in. But
back to the mayor, should we consider a bullet item, checklist item about appointments, mayoral appointments? What do people think of
so
that?
specifically, you're talking about
distinguished?
boards.
Yeah,
does that change relative to the form of government?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I'm asking our council.
It depends what appointments you're talking about. If you're talking about
zoning planning.
Zoning board, planning board,
a,
environmental commission.
planning board and zoning board, no, they would not change. The environmental commission generally would not. The ones that would change would be appointments of department heads, your business administrator, your CFO if they're not tenured.
Right.
Those people in the key administrative positions in a mayor council are appointed typically by the mayor with the advice and consent of the council, and the township committee, it's by consensus of the township committee. So different,
Yeah.
different.
So is that a checklist item then or not?
I think that comes under the
Phase 2.
mayoral responsibilities.
Yeah,
Like different forms of government vest different levels of power within the mayor,
Yeah.
and it's part of that topic. Maybe
Is
we'll
that
have to be.
strong mayor versus weak mayor then? Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like in certain of the forms of government, the mayor picks the department heads. It's like the mayor's the chief administrator. In
Right.
others, the
Yeah,
council hires a chief administrator who goes and hires people.
but yeah, no, I think for phase 1 though, it's not an area you dive into, because I think there's an appointment of the township administrator, and pretty much she acts as for lack of a better, chief operating officer, I think, of the township. And so and that appointment is subject to the consensus of the township committee. So I don't think that's a defining characteristics that require, but it may come up. If it comes up, then we get something, as I said, that this is not to be limiting, but rather if it comes up, we can explore that deeper and whatever. But I think we want to be mindful that if we're going to be having whatever 3 or 4 possibly individuals at a night, assuming we can get that many in one night, that basically you're talking about maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes as well too. So I think I want to keep to the more pertinent major issues, and I think the way we defined it with that list and would help guide us, but as specific things come in, but I think we also want to be careful. There's something that all of us would be curious, but I'm not sure getting too granular may help in terms of the process of deciding what works or what doesn't work within the township committee form of government. So, Zach, I know you said you had a lot of other stuff. I'm just mindful of the time here. I want to make sure we got whatever you need to.
I wanted to make sure that we knew what we would do for the first few meetings.
Oh, I think we can answer that question. I don't think we know what we're doing for until we actually do it. But
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what I think we're doing. If you want to hear, we're going to.
I think the discussion was good this evening.
We're going to decide who we're going to talk to over the next week.
Yeah, but I don't think there was any question about that.
And then we're going to go invite people to come and hopefully sit with us, and then we're going to review with them a set of topics, which I still believe it would be appropriate to let them know what topics we're interested in discussing before they come in, and not just hit them blind and expect them to.
How do you think the Giants are going to do the rest of the season? No.
And then so we'll have a couple weeks of that. And hopefully we'll talk to 6 or 7 people or whatever, and then we will invite the public to share their thoughts on these topics. So at least we have a plan for 3 meetings. And then
it's not going to be. It's good to get a jump start on that. Obviously, as we go along, this may be too optimistic, but I think we will plan as we go along as well too, to take some time to make sure that it goes beyond the first 3 weeks, obviously, because these things, I'm sure all of you know, if you don't plan ahead, think ahead, then you hit the time or whatever, and things don't happen because you haven't thought about that weeks before. So I know you've listened. We all agree with that, but yeah, okay.
plan to fail.
Anything else, Jerry? I can't see you, so I just want to make sure if you got any other comments.
No, I just got to go take a half a gallon of Benadryl, I think, before I got there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, sorry, not feeling it.
As my wife would say, too much details.
Because of this conversation. No, I'm sorry.
Too much details, Jerry. Good. We're having an open and transparent conversation.
I think this was good to get this started, honestly, because we find ourselves behind the 8 ball if we weren't moving forward.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna be smooth all the time. This is gonna be ups and downs. This is the process, but you got to tackle it. Take the bull by the horns is what my old boss used to say, right?
Okay, you first. No, listen, don't get me wrong. So I just want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to talk, so I usually like to reserve the things at the end. If there's any I think we're in general agreement. The only hesitation, maybe if anyone notices, I do think that until we know certain individuals are willing to come out, that my hesitation is to not kind of get their names out there before we know that they want to talk. So I think the way we want to address that, I think it's a good way to do that. And we'll move forward. Listen, I think we're on the same page, which is that, listen, come January 6th, we can really hit the ground running. So far, these 2 meetings, it's been kind of organizing and planning, and the heavy lifting will come, doing all this thing and talking with the various people that will appear before us. So I think we're on the same page on that. So.
I'd like procedurally the minutes to be available at the very next meeting for a vote. I know that's very difficult sometimes, and I know you said you have an issue of finding a staff person to do that here.
I believe there is some limitation as to who's there, but I will definitely pursue that. We got a little bit of time between now, but once the meetings really kick off, we got a week's, time between meetings, so that may or may not, hopefully it won't be an issue, but yeah.
And can, if we don't have the minutes, can we review the recording? Is that available?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
It'll be posted.
So just for the record, I mean, this is being live streamed. It is on YouTube, and on the YouTube channel, if you're on YouTube, just look for Holmdel Township. They have an official channel, and all the videos, all the recordings are on there. So anyone, the public can review that, and so that is a verbatim video and audio of the meeting. So anyone can do that.
Because we'll probably have a disagreement about what was said, so we'll have to listen to the recording.
That will be the ultimate.
Yeah, if you want to see what you said.
Well, I didn't really mean to say that, but okay. Anything else? Okay. All right. I am going to end this discussion. I think we've got our work cut out for us. I want to kind of, if there's nothing else, I'm going to open up for public comments. Anyone from the public wish to make any public comment?
Ryan.
Please state your name, address. Thank you.
Brian McMullen, 3 Burgundy Drive. Earlier, you indicated a third step, which would be an official recommendation. It wasn't clear, did you say that was going to be given to the township committee? Or is that just, once you make an official recommendation, that's
No,
what's
I
going to
did not
be
say
on the
that.
ballot in November?
So when the commission concludes, brings its work to go, they will have to file a formal report with the township clerk.
Okay.
And because we are a separate body from the township committee, if there's any recommendation that the commission makes, which will be in the form of a public question, then the clerk, and Kevin, jump in if I'm missaying this, but the clerk will then need to file that report, and if there's recommendation, will need to do whatever she needs to do to get that as a public question on a ballot to be decided by the voters.
Okay, thank you very much on that. Will the commission be providing data on the various forms of government in terms of number of municipalities for each form of government, the population sizes for each municipality, the number of council members for each municipality? It seems that I've heard a number of you say at this point that size seems to be of a concern as to the number of current township committee members at 5, that 5 has been the same whether we were a small town 50 years ago or we're a 17,000 resident town now. It would be interesting to see, does Middletown have, because they have a much larger residency, do they have 20 members on their council? But it was a question you seemed to bat around, so it would be helpful to know some of the data on that.
I would think the League of Municipalities probably has.
Well, there's certainly data out there, but I quite honestly don't. The commission, it's not our charge to provide the data. It's actually our charge to fact gather and get input and get opinion. And I think as part of that process, I hope that, again, we'll have informational meetings where people who really do know this will present what they think are relevant information to share with this body and with the public. And so, that may be something that may be included with them. I know that there are lots of information out there. I'm sure if you Google that, but that's probably part of the input and so on that we expect to get in phase 2.
Okay, so as part of your recommendation, if you were to suggest that size of the township is relevant to the size of the township council, that's just a recommendation and with no
I think that's putting the
supporting
cart
facts.
before the horse. We're not trying to make any recommendation. I think we're trying to bring up issues that, at least starting up front where, potentially could be looked into and seek their opinion. So I think until we get to that process, I'm not sure that we're ready to jump into any conclusion right now. So, but what we do know is that, look, it's a matter of fact that we know that the Board of Ed has 9 members. We know that the planning board is only about different members, and it's a logical question to at least. Now, it's possible that the input we get from people would just say, no, it's working fine, and then, it may not be. I don't know. So I think we need to kind of let this process play out and hear that, and then we have to apply some judgment as to, what's the right findings and
Okay.
suggestions and all that.
So you don't feel the commission would be responsible for providing factual data to back up statements made?
I didn't say that we're not, what I said was that the commission is not responsible for putting out the data. I think we will seek input and opinion, and that includes whatever factual data to support whatever the presenters and that may provide to this body. So we're not a research and think tank for us to provide that kind of data. No, anyone else can speak to that, but that's just,
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no other public comment, I am gonna end the public comment session. Can I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, any not in favor of adjourning this meeting? Hearing none, we hereby declare this meeting to be
Not in
adjourned.
favor,
Thank you.
can remain here by yourself.
Thank you.
Get better, Jerry.
Jerry will hang, oh, he already hung up? Did he?